Welcome to Historic Living, Modern World. I'm Gregory Shelton. We're at the kitchen at Poplar Hall. We're making a great soup. It's going to be a squash soup. It's going to be delicious. So when we talk about a squash soup, everyone's seen something on the internet where it's this beautiful orange color. It's a creamy soup, so it's really a kind of a milk or a dairy-based soup. They're always luscious. They're always beautifully garnished. And we always want to figure out how to make them. The recipe that I'm showing you today is going to be so simple that it's all going to be hand-grown ingredients, so it's not something you have to worry about shopping forever to find the ingredients if you grow it yourself. Now, these two things that we're looking at right here, to the naked eye or to the standard farmer, this is a strange-looking squash. These were grown in our farm, on our patch. These two folks that we have right in front of me, they're squash. They're from China. They're an heirloom squash called black futsu. Now the cool thing about them is they came from our patch, so we grew them last year, and they've sit in our root cellar, and they're really just, they're still incredible. They're still firm, they smell beautiful, they're ready to cook, and we still probably have a month before anything happens to them. We got some amazing seeds from the team, the wonderful team at Blue Pumpkin Seed. They produce some of the most amazing seeds out there. And I really went for some of the most bizarre pumpkins and squash that I could get. And the Black Futsu were great producers of beautiful pumpkins, and they have a beautiful apricot finish on the outside. But when they were in the growing season at the end of last year, they had this beautiful blue-gray striations. It's just a beautiful, beautiful squash. And to know that they're edible makes it all the better. The good thing about these is the flavor. Now, a normal squash soup is really a butternut squash. Maybe throw some carrots in there. Some people put apples to sweeten it up a little bit. But the secret ingredients and the special hidden thing are these squash. They have a nuttiness to them, a complex flavor. I love the blooming on the outside, which is indicative of the squash. They do go through a lot of different colors before they're actually ready to be harvested. And if you leave them in the sun, they will end up being this kind of flesh apricot color. The other part that's indicative for the futsus is this beautiful blooming on the outside. That's indicative of this cultivar. It's actually, they call it blooming, but it's kind of a light gray cast. It really, when it's blue, it really looks beautiful. I'm seriously amazed when we look at the idea that these were harvested in October last year, and they can go for 6 to 7 months if stored correctly. So the flavors are going to be more intense, and when we mash these into our soup, you're going to get a really concentrated hazelnut, beautiful flavor that makes this a game changer. All right, so let's get ready to make this soup. Very simple recipe. Crank your oven to 425. When that's ready to go, get a cookie sheet, put some foil down, put your squash there, put it into the oven about 60 minutes to 80 minutes, and you're gonna have beautifully soft squash. The other thing I want to tell you about, which I think is a little bit of a secret ingredient, we're gonna put a carrot in there. So the reason we're putting a carrot in there is really because your squash is providing a meaty, kind of a hazelnut flavor. The butternut squash will also provide a little bit of sugar, but we want a little bit of real sugar in there. So the carrot will give you that. So I want to make sure you understand what are the contents in the recipe for the soup. You obviously have your squash and your carrot. You're going to use 1 large onion, 4 cloves of fresh garlic, a bay leaf, some thyme. We're going to be using cream at the end of the soup and some handmade chicken broth, and you're really going to be golden with soup. Okay, so the next stage is you take your onions and your garlic, and you're really going to be sweating them off, okay? So I have some olive oil and butter into the pan. Put your onions in. So you're really going to be sweating these off. I would say probably medium heat. It's okay to get a little color on the onions, but you do not want to burn the garlic. That'll ruin this soup, and that's going to give you a really awful flavor that you have to avoid. So our squash have been cooking for 70 minutes. They're fork tender, which means a fork or a knife poked into them is very, very soft. It's exactly what you really need to make this great. And I want to show you what these look like, because to the naked eye, they're not the prettiest things in the world. But I want to show you. When you cook them blindly like this, You could peel your butternut squash, you could peel your pumpkins, you could peel your carrots and roast them like that. You probably get an interesting flavor, of course, but this is just easier. You put them on a pan, put them in the oven. How could it be any easier than that? So I want to show you. They're fork tender. Oh, it's very meaty. If you could smell this room, you would be blown away. Look how beautiful that is. But we don't need any of this part, as you would have done anyway if you cooked them as a standard roast. So I want you guys to get a load of how beautiful the flesh is on these squash. Look how beautiful this is. When you cook them right, it's so soft. It's almost like a pudding. You have our carrots in there. It adds to a beautiful orange mixture that has so many different colors. And this is just the start of such a beautiful soup. So you take your pan with your beautiful onion and garlic that are sweat off with a little bit of color, not a whole bunch, just a little bit to give a roasting effect, okay? Then you're gonna be adding your flesh of your squash and your carrots together. Then you're gonna be adding 4 cups of homemade chicken broth. You have a beautiful color. Oh my gosh, it smells unbelievable. We're gonna go with some fresh thyme. So about, I would say 4 to 5 sprigs of fresh thyme. Then what I wanna do is, instead of having to hunt these things down in your soup, I tend to make a kind of a bouquet garni kind of style, where you're gonna be twining them together, so you'll still get the flavor, but it won't be, you won't have to go in the soup to find them. So you're just gonna add your herbs together, and you're gonna tie it up. So your thyme and your bay leaf go in. We're going to add that to the stove. So the soup is cooked down beautifully. I'm going to show you exactly what it's looking like. So look how beautiful the color is. Almost like a burnt orange. Perfect color. The flavor, the smell is exactly like I hoped. You can kind of still see the onions, a little bit of the garlic in there. Now what we're going to be doing, we're going to be pureeing this, because this is ultimately a pureed soup. So you can use an immersion blender, which a lot of people use. I'm going to use a standard blender on a puree setting, and that's going to give me the consistency and the viscosity that I really want for the soup. Now, when you're looking at what the thickness should be for yourself, I look at this between a bisque and almost a broth soup. So almost the consistency of a heavy whipping cream. So we're heading down a final stretch for an amazing soup. Again, I can't talk about how beautiful the colors are. This burnt orange says for a beautiful soup. I already love the consistency. We're going to be adding some heavy cream and some spices to finish, okay? So we're going to go with a little bit of cinnamon, okay? Not a whole bunch, just a little bit of toss. Again, you want the hints of cinnamon and nutmeg to be on the back of the palate, not on the front. Then we're going to add about 3/4 of a cup of heavy whipping cream. This is going to smooth the soup out and really help dampen the color a little bit, but it's really going to add a creaminess to the soup that's just going to make this such an unbelievable experience. Watch how the cream just kind of melts in. And the one thing I always want to remind people here is you're adding this at the end. You're not doing this at the beginning. You're adding it at the end. It's really going to provide a creaminess, but it's going to really balance it out. Salt, because believe it or not, we've yet to add salt or pepper. I always use kosher salt. I'd say about half of a teaspoon. Then freshly ground pepper. I would say about 1/2 of a teaspoon to 1/4. Soup is done, and now we're going to plate it. Boy, look how beautifully thick that is. Just going to put a little bit of fresh thyme on top. Nothing major. Just finish it off there. Now the moment of truth is here. We have a beautiful soup. Now it's time to taste it. Oh, the viscosity of the soup is beautiful. Oh, wow. Whew. This is what I'm getting from this beautiful soup. I can already tell the carrot in it because it provides a little bit of sugar and sweetness there as a backdrop. But the butternut squash is providing the sugars. But I'm telling you, the heirloom black futsu squash is providing a nuttiness to this, almost a chestnut flavor that I think makes this an absolute game changer soup for you and your family. I cannot wait for you to try it. If you like what you've seen today, make sure you click like and subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram. This is Gregory Shelton from Historic Living Modern World, reminding you, whenever you do something, always work to move people. Cheers.